rendering tutorial. So we start with our base color, and the next part isn't really important, I just like to do it. You can just add it to your base, it's not important to do this part. I color pick a warm color and use it for shadows and warm tones on the face. I add blush to nose, eyes, and shadows. And I really just start color picking. There's not really a process, you just kinda have to do what feels right. Trust me, it's gonna look bad before it looks good. That's just what I've done to myself. I use gray to add a cool tone to the shadows, it just gives it a bit more oomph. And then I just continue rendering. For finishing touches, I add highlights. I give some hair so she isn't bald, and voila, we have a face. Okay, bye.
You ever do a sketch and you're like, this looks really good, and then you add line art and it just... Today we're talking about line art weight. Sketching captures loose movement, and we want to reflect that in our line art. The weight of a line is dictated by how much pressure you're putting on your pen. When you're doing line art, ask yourself these questions. Where is the light and where is your drawing in comparison? What's in the shadow? Where do your lines intersect? And where is the gravity? In this example, I'm going to add more weight to the lines that are in the shadow, like underneath the leg here, and I'll add thinner lines to where the light's hitting. In terms of gravity, this cloth is being pulled down, so I'm going to thicken the lines that probably have the most weight. There's also going to be natural shadow where lines intersect, so you can thicken those. I know it sounds lame, but this is not easy, and the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it.
Y'all, I just discovered this trick. If your line art is too thick, go to liquify, click on edge, change the pressure and the size, and y'all, you can make your line art thinner. This is a game changer for me. I don't know about y'all, but I was having a problem with thick line art, and this totally solved it.
How to draw poses in 33 seconds. First, you're gonna need to find yourself a reference photo. And to do that, I like to use Pinterest and search things like cool dynamic poses. Now, the trick to drawing poses is to first break down the human body into extremely simple shapes and lines. Like here, I literally just use two simple lines for the person's legs. So don't even worry about adding any details, muscles, or outfits. Just focus on making the proportions look correct. But then once you're happy with the structure and proportions of your pose, it's just a matter of smoothing out the shapes and erasing the original sketch lines. And if you want to see a real-time video of me drawing a pose, I just posted one in my Discord server.
When I'm with you, the world makes sense, but when we're apart, I see clearly that your world is not a world from which one can escape. I am so sorry. Oh, Arthur, I miss you, and I will always miss you, but I cannot live like that. And it seems you cannot live any other way. I am so sorry for everything long ago, and for starting up that business again. There's a good man within you. I enclose a ring you gave me many years ago, when we were both young. Not because I don't like it, but because I care for it far too much, and it reminds me.
Stop giving your characters super unrealistic jawlines. I'm sure you can even agree it looks a bit weird if they're too sharp. So instead you're gonna want to do this. After you've drawn a circle for the face, split it in half so you know where the eyes go. And at the bottom of the circle is where the nose will be. Now you're gonna want to use two diagonal lines to construct the actual jawline. The first one should be going from the eyes down to the bottom of the nose. And the second one should be slightly more tilted, going from the bottom of the nose all the way down to the chin. This will give you a more realistic face structure for all of your characters. If you want to learn more about facial features, click the link in my bio for my new video art course.
I wanted to share an art tip that has been useful in my experience. I know a common answer on how to improve art is to just practice, but sometimes it can feel like homework. Find something you really like and draw it over and over and over again.
You could have been getting down to this sick beat. My ex-man brought his new girlfriend. She's like, oh my god, but I'm just gonna shake it to the fella over there with the hella good hair. Won't you come on over, baby? We can shake, shake, shake.
If you have beautiful sketches but absolutely hate the thought of doing line art, try lightening your sketch and focusing on just the bits that need refinement. Not only will this preserve the energy of your initial idea, but I've found it also helps improve your ability to make cleaner sketches in general, because you start looking at the sketch as a part of the final piece rather than just a temporary step. For that nice polish, I just merge everything and start rendering on top. It's essentially a more painterly approach to art, skipping the line art stage altogether.
Here's how I go from grayscale to color. I start with a black and white sketch, and then I lighten that sketch with like a reddish tone. I do this so it blends nicely with the colors. Then I make a new layer underneath my sketch layer, and I fill that in with the skin tone color, just like a flat color. I do this with a big brush and high opacity. Then I'm gonna go in with a warm tone for like under eyes and bottom of the nose, lips, all that. Then I'm gonna use like an off-white for the eyes, and like a tealish color for shadows like underneath the nose. Then I make another layer on top of all those layers, and with my opacity really low, I start rendering. And there you go, you went from black and white to color.
Here's a little walkthrough of my skin rendering process. First, I start coloring my lineart in a color that blends with the skin. Then I set the lineart layer to multiply and start adding base colors. After adding the base, I start with general shading. I do it in the same base color layer. I pick the colors to shade from the sketch lines and base colors. I use the same highly textured brush for everything. It's perfect pencil with tilt support for Clip Studio Paint. In this step, I don't clean the shadows, just place them to render them after. After placing shadows and highlights, I merge the sketch and color layers into one. Then I start rendering the skin. As you can see, this process is like the latest one but much more cleaner. I keep color picking from the shadows and lines previously placed to make everything smoother. Since I'm doing this in just one layer, I just paint over the sketch lines. This is where I add my fave details, like those lines for cheeks and lips. When rendering the eyes, I prefer not using pitch black colors for the lashes. This artwork is mainly warm yellows and oranges, so I use dark browns. This way I go through the drawing, rendering every piece of it. Here, I'm adding a little accent to the important stuff, the face. Finally, I add the lights. I like bold, shiny lights. To get a better result, I first add a very shiny color and then I paint with white over it. Hope you found this useful. Like and comment for a part 2 with a hair rendering tutorial. I start with the base coloring. Usually I use more reddish tone of the base color to draw blush and shadows. Blushed parts are eyes, nose and mouth. Some lighting on the eyelids. Usually the darkest parts are spaces under eyebrows, eyes, nose and mouth. Put some very light shadows between eyebrows and chin as well.
Such a foolish reason, I'm afraid. I don't want to kiss you.
Now it's time for other shadow spaces. After drawing shadows, add more lights as well. Some reflections. When shadows are too boring, you can use some opposite colors, so it'd look like bottom lighting. Adding some adjustments, and we are done.
A few people asked me recently if I can show how I color and render. So here is a whole process. I think a really important thing is to blur the sketch and don't use high contrasts for this type of style. I always merge all layers and work on one. I also like to use some blue and purple for the skin. Through the whole video you can see my color palette. I hope it is a little bit helpful. The brushes I'm using are made by Tsuwon Jing Sketch. Both sets you can get for free.
Life was hard, but it's a piece of cake. Even if Johnny hasn't melted in a couple days. You would check your first, so you can't tell
At the end I'm adding a little bit of line art and final highlights.
So I started making chunky shadows and lights and slowly define them with the same brush but in a smaller size. And you can see that I never actually use the blending feature. I just do it manually because I really like the look of it, honestly. So I adjust the size and adjust the pressure and use the color drop to select the color in between. And that's how I manually blend it. It takes a while, it takes more time. But if you like the result, you gotta do what you gotta do.
How I render. Get your sketch. Flat color. Add lighting. Clean up the lines and things you don't like. Finishing touches. And you're done.
Part 2 of gesture drawing tutorial. Along with the line of action, it's helpful to add lines for arms and legs. Points like elbows and knees are known as landmarks. Simply, it's important to note where they are to avoid noodle arms. There are two main ways to build up the form from here. One is by using cubes and straight lines. Each section of the body can be broken down into simple cubes. The other way is using ovoids, or ovals. Most artists use a combo of both methods, but most people prefer one a bit over the other.
Stop drawing eyes from a 3/4 perspective like this. To be honest, this has to be one of the hardest angles to draw eyes from. Like, just look at these eyes. They don't really look that bad, but they don't really look that good either. So instead, you're gonna wanna do this. Start off with a slightly curved line for the top of the eye. Then instead of doing the full shape of the eye, what you're gonna wanna do is use a straight line for the far side of the eye. You have to remember that the eye wraps around the face. So from this angle, we don't see the far corner of the eye. That's pretty much it, but also feel free to use reference if you need. And now your drawings won't look all weird because I know they did before. It's just a joke. You're welcome.